everyone. Welcome to another podcast. Okay, well, we had our amazing BCBA business owner panel together, and during our podcast recording, we had a power outage. But not only was it during the recording, it was like at the very end. So
55 minutes in, I
think. 55 minutes in. Really great conversation. Really, a lot of really good points made. And in our podcast world, on the behind the scenes, the part that Steven is works his magic on, we have multiple recordings to be able to bring the quality that we have. And
it's improved, I hope.
Hopefully it's an improved quality if you were to go back and listen to some of our earlier stuff. And then also to be able to have quality video to put up on YouTube and social media and stuff like that, right? So we have multiple recordings going on at once. But during this amazing panel discussion, we and the power outage went out. It corrupted all of the fancy files. But we had our Teams meeting recording going. So we're excited that we did get a chance to still bring you this discussion. I guess we're just doing an audio version this year. We're still going to do a video too.
I apologize for the poor video, and I apologize mostly for the poor audio. Just you hear, because it's all one audio track, you'll hear people that didn't mute, mostly me, at the right times. And so that when I listened and watched, it was rather annoying. But we do feel like it was important information to get out. And it really does kick off our wonderful series on I Hate My Job. And now I hate the audio on this podcast. I hate my job. So just one more reason to hate some stuff, I guess. So, but we hope you enjoy the content. We feel like it was valuable content to bring out. And
there is a bit of an abrupt ending. And so it is what it is. So we hope that you still, we feel like it still brings value. So that's why we're sharing it. So hopefully you can overlook. If not, move on and listen to our other podcasts.
Buy some of our stuff.
All right. Well, thank you. And I really hope you enjoy listening to today's podcast.
See ya. Hello, everyone listening, watching. Today, we are just this is going to start our series on I Hate My Job. So we have taken a look at social media comments from techs and behavior analysts. And there's a lot of bad ones out there. And so we're just going to kind of briefly touch on that. And then we're going to ask the panel, how do we prevent these bad comments from happening in our companies? Burnout is high in every industry probably, but I think in the helping field that we find ourselves in, I think it's more. And none of us want to cause burnout and stress and overwhelm. For the most part, I think, especially this panel, but I think just in general, no BCBA wakes up in the morning and says, hey, how can I commit fraud today? Right? No BCBA comes to work and says, hey, how can I burn out my team today? Right? I don't think that's an intention. It just winds up that's where we find ourselves. So April, if you want to introduce the panel.
Yeah, so we have three of our panelists here today. We have Jennifer and Robin and Mallory, and we're really happy to have you guys back today.
Hey.
Hi.
We've been looking at Reddit. We've been still trying. So if any RBTs hear this wonderful podcast,
behavior techs, you don't have to.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, behavior techs, ABA therapists, whatever you call yourself. If you feel like reaching out to us, and we would love to have a panel. We think it's important to hear from you. We want to hear from you, and I can guarantee. Well, maybe some business owners don't want to hear it. They need to hear it. So we would love for an RBT panel. One of our processes, we reached out to a bunch of RBTs. 6 said they were going to come. Only 1 showed up, and she said, "Hey, you really should check out Reddit if you want to hear from BTs." So, me being old, I didn't know Reddit was a real big thing, but it's a big thing. So, I went on there into the ABA groups, and I mean, there is just a lot of well-meaning BTs that feel alone, and they feel in an uncomfortable situation, an unethical situation. And it can't all be fake, right? Maybe some of it is exaggerated. I don't know. I've had enough interviews, and we'll kind of throw it to the panel after this, but I've had enough interviews in this field that there's a lot of unethical, uncomfortable things going on. And, we talk about this in another podcast, but like the anti-ABA group that's out there, a lot of their points are valid. There are a lot of unethical companies out there doing the wrong thing, and so
well, I mean, part of our mission is to collaborate with as many ABA providers that we can, and for us all to work together, because there are also a lot of providers out there, who are providing quality services, yes, and who really want to see things improve and things change and grow as we know more. So we have some of those ladies here.
Absolutely. So yeah, I just want to throw it out, and we can start tonguing.
Yeah.
So I
go ahead,
like
Jennifer.
you said, interviews for doing interviews over the past 10 years. I've heard. I'm serious. There's times that I've now heard it all. I think the overarching thing that I get the most though from technicians or people who they stay in the field because they genuinely want to continue to help. They want to make meaningful change in a child's life. They just aren't finding the correct place. And the 2 things that I hear the most is poor leadership, mm-hmm, and lack of ability to grow in a company. And the way that the RBTs, that position itself is treated in some companies, not all, like you said, there's a lot of us here who want to do right, like who want to take care of our team. And that the RBTs are just a commodity that can just be tossed off to the side, and they're, you're a guy that doesn't replace you. You don't care. The real emphasis on taking care of anybody is the BCBA. And I would even tell you that I've seen BCBAs have the same complaint. Like they don't really care about me as an individual or as a professional. It's just how much money can I crank out for them. Right. So, but that's, that's a whole different topic. But from the RBT standpoint, that is, to me, very unfortunate, because you're losing an opportunity to bring somebody into this field that could help make change in the future. And this could turn into somebody who wants to be a BCBA someday and could help help increase the positive outcomes in our industry, instead of turning true talent and people who really care, mm-hmm, turning it away. And then not only are you giving it a bad name from a career standpoint, they're going to go out there and say, no, I wouldn't put my child in ABA. I never saw anything come out of it. We just turned them into this or this or this or this. And so, but the 2 overarching things that I always hear is that they're treated like they're a dime a dozen, and the lack of leadership, like there's no support. They're trained for 24 hours and tossed into a session with a kid that they've never met. They don't even know the behavior plan. They've never been trained on this child. There's no thought. It's just get in there and you're a warm body. And the person who cares about the kids is not going to be okay with not helping that child and just being a glorified babysitter. People who don't know any better are going to do that. And that's because they don't know any better, right? But then we'll get technicians who come to us after they've been, and we're pretty much retraining them. And they're like, I didn't even know that this was part of ABA. I didn't even know it could be this amazing. I didn't know that we could see these kind of outcomes, because that's not how it was presented or how they were treated or how. And when you look, I don't even get turned off by resumes anymore that are hoppers, because I'm so used to the stories of what they're saying. And we don't usually, when they're with us, thank goodness they stay for a while. So that tells you there really is an industry problem.
Right.
Yeah.
There really is. And if they've been with one agency for a period of time, generally speaking, what's happening is I would just like to see how it's done somewhere else. But there's longevity.
Right.
The therapists that I'll see come through that are maybe every 6 months, which that's the 6-month mark when you've pretty much figured it out. And you're like, this is not where I want to be. It doesn't even really, I don't even get concerned about that anymore. Like I used to, because I've heard enough stories. I've seen it that I understand that this is genuinely a person who genuinely wants to be with someplace where they feel their kids are being treated correctly. The team is being treated correctly. We're all being treated with that respect and mental health is a real thing. We're not burning people out. We're checking in. We're making sure there's support. But Reddit, I mean, they're not wrong.
No.
There's a lot of truth in it, but I do think sometimes there's two perspectives.
Sure.
But there is a lot of truth. And when you're hearing the same thing over.
Yeah.
I'll start going, something's up.
Yeah. And I don't want to, we can certainly talk about BCBAs too in this conversation. And something that I noticed, because I've been helping a couple of companies hire BCBAs, and I don't know, maybe I'm mistaken, but I'm seeing BCBAs leave companies really quickly too, like 8 months, 6 months, maybe 12 months. And that has not been my experience up to this point. And I was surprised at how many BCBAs are just saying, dude, I'm out of here. Right. It's no longer just at least in my experience, it's no longer just an RBT or BT turnover thing. It seems like it's just across the field. It's just super stressful, need those billable hours. You're just a cog in a wheel. So I don't know about your experience seeing resumes of BCBAs, if you're seeing the same thing or.
April and I are so honored to have Margin Keepers sponsor this podcast.
Running an ABA business comes with its share of challenges. Managing clients, staff, insurance, the list goes on.
One thing you shouldn't add to your stress, bookkeeping. That's where Margin Keepers comes in.
They're specialists in ABA businesses, which means they understand exactly what we need.
With Margin Keepers handling your finances, you can focus on what really matters, your clients and your practice's growth.
They're more than just bookkeepers. They're lifesavers in the financial world of ABA.
So for peace of mind and expert financial management,
turn to Margin Keepers. It's a decision that will lift a weight off of your shoulders.
Check out Margin Keepers at www.marginkeepers.com and see how they can help your business thrive.
Well, I can't necessarily speak about BCBAs, but I think in general, logistically, right, how things are set up just in the field, right? Like the relationship is so dependent on so many factors, right? I have to have clients in order to have staff, and then I have to have staff in order to have clients. And some of the decisions and the design that I have for my company in general, I mean, I specifically transitioned to a block schedule because of the fact that some of my techs, and even when I was a tech, I couldn't get the amount of hours that I needed to actually make a living, right? And luckily, when I was a tech, my husband was able to support me in doing so, right? But so that's why I transitioned to that, knowing, right, that I can't necessarily give clients 30 hours a week or 40 hours a week if that's needed. But that's okay. Like I make decisions not to be able to serve those clients because they really, maybe should be at a clinic. I only do in-home services. And so doing 30 hours a week is really, in my opinion, not appropriate in the home, right? Like that's pretty intense. And I think it, creates a lot of issues, but so I do think logistically, I think that's just hard. I think it's stressful for the techs. It's always been one of those things that have come up, especially in home. I mean, it creates another one. Part of the stress that I'm always looking at and concerned about is commute time in between clients, and just the fact of them having to be constantly, not constantly, but rerouted frequently, right? Oh, that client canceled. Hey, you still need the hours, and I still need somebody to serve, clients because maybe another tech has canceled. that really wears on them too. And I have not figured out a solution for that. We try our very best. But I also think that it's difficult because I want to drop the standard down to, you don't work 40 hours a week. You really only work 25 to 30 hours a week. But financially, when reimbursements rates aren't super great, like how can we sustain that with our techs, right? How can they make a good living? Because I think that also like a lot of the stress, right? Is like the financial piece of it. And so, like I said, I don't have a solution. I just want to make sure that that any RBTs or even BCBAs too understand that I definitely, a lot of us see it. We see it and we're trying to actively come up with solutions. We're not there yet, but this is obviously why we have the panel, right? Yeah. We're collaborating. We're trying to make it better. I did recently just ask some of my techs that have been with me longer, like, what has made you stay? And honestly, I was like, I don't want to even ask this because I was like, what if they say something to me that like a dagger to the heart? And some of the things that they responded back to were things that I didn't really think that I was doing anything special or something different, but to those techs, right, it meant something. And so I do think it also goes back to me as a boss, and we individualize, services and support for our clients. It almost needs to be that same way for our employees. What means the most to one employee is not going to mean the most to another. And so, it's like being able to do that. But again, it's a load, right? Every owner, every CEO, every BCBA that is managing people, it's a load. So, but I do think the individualized, kind of look at each tech and each BCBA is going to be different.
I think we try, I think there's a bunch of reasons why being an RBT is hard. Like for training purposes, we try and do pretty intensive training models. We kind of assess, we have one of our BCBAs that assesses the applicants before they're hired and also after they start, and then kind of see where their gaps are in learning. So they might have experience or they might not. And then we tailor our training specifically to each RBT. So rather than we want them to be an RBT before we do our training part. So we have them do that part first, and then we train them on anything else that would make a good RBT, a good RBT. And then if there's gaps in their learning, we try and, fill in those for them as best we can. And then do ongoing support. We might have one that was really good at, discrete trial training. And then she really struggled with natural environment training, like natural environment teaching. She really struggled with that model. So we had to, give her the flexibility to try and learn that modality a little bit differently. And that was helpful. And as far as unpredictable hours, I think that's one thing that people complain about a lot is unpredictable hours. And Mallory, like you, we switched to block scheduling a while back too. And we got a lot of pushback from parents because previously we would just ask them what their availability was. We'd have our, recommended medically necessary hours. Sometimes they couldn't do them all. It's fine. I understand life. But I think we tailored a little bit too much to the families and had really wonky schedules so that it made it impossible for the techs to fill in their schedules. They've got a random Friday off or every other Tuesday, or, they're only doing an hour and a half, but yet they're commuting. So we don't do any shorter sessions like that either. And I think that's been helpful. And, even with the afternoon sessions, we ideally want them to get at least 10 to 15 hours in the afternoon blocks if possible, just logistically. And also I think from a medical standpoint, I think it helps out the kids if they're getting at least that much, ideally, even with the higher functioning kiddos. We've also kind of instituted with client cancellations, because I know that's a big complaint with staff is you have a last minute cancellation, the kid wouldn't get in the car and so they didn't make it to the center, or the mom's tired or the kid didn't sleep well or whatever. They cancel last minute. So we, try and nip it in the bud if it becomes a habit, but for the one-off situations, we try and, if possible, we'll try and come up with something that we can offer for them to do here at the center if they want to come in. We do in-home services a lot too. That's probably most of our modality, but we do have a center-based location here in Atlanta. And so we'll offer them if they want to come in, they can do some admin work. We had some that were cold calling doctors' offices. We had a spreadsheet ongoing where we were tracking marketing purposes. We'd have a script. We'd train them on how to do that kind of stuff. We also offer to let them do things organize a closet, a toy closet, and clean it up and label things. And straighten things up if they felt like they're willing to do that. It's not something they have to do, but if there's something around here that we could let them do that would be helpful or beneficial to the company, it doesn't help the owners so much because we don't get paid for it. But I had one of our newer staff come into my office like a few weeks after she started and was like tearing up and just thanking me. She's worked at several companies before, and the fact that we have this optional support, like when there's last minute cancellation, she really appreciated that, and she was just sitting there cleaning out the toy closet right next to my office. Like one of the admins asked her to do that, just to organize it and straighten up with the new toy boxes. So, I think I appreciated that feedback too. So I thought that was, a helpful option. But it gets expensive. Stuff it gets to get. And I know we also like summer's coming up right now. And so we'll have families that are going out of town for a week or two or like a month or something, and so we put it on our tracker, and then we kind of have this Excel spreadsheet where we're seeing all the people that are out, which therapists are looking for hours. We have a tracker for that, which clients are going to be out of town. These are these dates. And then we see if the families they currently work with are interested in more hours, if they have them available on the schedule to make up the difference, or see if one of the clients is going to be out, if there's an opportunity to sub here and there. So just to kind of, flip flop things around if people trying to find creative ways to help people get paid, so I understand people want to go on vacation, both sides, but
Sure.
it's also, hard financially.
Robin,
I think it's hard too because there's some. Jen.
You want to be client centric, right? You want to make sure that the kids are getting what they need, but you run a business, and just like Alex said, I mean, we're interdependent. The BCBAs are interdependent on the RBTs. RBTs are interdependent. Sorry, my light just went out.
Still a little damp.
Yeah. But then we're interdependent on our clients, and our clients are, so it's like this big interdependency. And what we started doing, because at first we were very much like, well, we're going to really cater to the parents. We really want to make sure that we're not pigeonholing them. And we still do work with the parents. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But what we say to the parents up front is, listen, we'll guarantee you the hours that we have recommended. We will not guarantee you the schedule you want. We have to be we have not just your child, but every child that we serve. We have they're all a priority, and we have to be sure that everybody is getting everything they need. And from the text, standpoint, we need to be sure that they're getting at least. And so what we'll do is we'll sample our text like, okay, listen, I need to know exactly how many hours a week you absolutely have to have. Like, it's not negotiable for you in order to make sure, because maybe some of them may only need 36 hours and they can get by with 36 hours. Maybe some only need 30. Maybe some need exactly 40. So we'll work with all of those and prioritize, and then work that in with our parents. We also used to be very oh yeah, you want to start at 9:00, that's fine. But the problem with that is if you had a client start at 9 and everybody else is starting at 8, that one therapist has just lost an hour of their day. And so we've really started to shaping that more and more, like, hey, listen, we'll work with you between 8 and 8:30, but we really need to be getting in here. And if, I'm sorry, little Johnny doesn't want to get up every morning at 9:00. I mean, that's part of what this is about, is getting your child on a schedule. Like, if you want your child to go to school, they're going to tell you there's truancy here if you don't get in there. So you've got to take this serious, And it's just all exactly creative ways. We have a last minute cancellation. We've always had that. The child cancels at the last minute. The staff member has the opportunity to get in and do administrative stuff, or they can take that session off. Sometimes they take the session off. Sometimes they need to come in. And like you said, Robin, on the one-offs, we don't say anything. We start noticing a trend.
Right.
We need to start having a conversation, because now not only are you affecting my staff, you're affecting your child's progress, because we're missing out on valuable time that we can't get back. So it's definitely a give and take when it comes to things.
I think it's hard to, and I don't know really how you guys have approached this too, but sometimes when we see those cancellations happen, right? There's parent guidance and family, training, parent training and stuff that we do. But I think sometimes those conversations are between the BCBA, the owner, and the parent, right? And I don't necessarily always like advertise to the RBT, like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I've noticed that there's lots of canceling going on. I did tell the parents, like, I did talk to the parents, because I don't feel like that's necessarily always appropriate for them to know, like what all I have addressed with them, right? Because sometimes those are really, really hard conversations to have with the families. And so sometimes, I've just, let them know, like, hey, I recognize that, there's a lot of cancellations, just so like, I recognize it, and, I'm going to talk to them. But I don't ever want it to turn into a negative thing, right? Because there's things sometimes in the background that the techs may not need to know, right? Personal family things that are going on or that the families have asked me, like, hey, this is a really sensitive situation, and we're not, eventually we'll probably communicate to everybody, but this is what, we're not ready to yet. And that's hard, because I do feel like, the transparency isn't always there. And I am a very transparent person. So, like I wear all of my cards on my sleeve, and that's just how it is. So that's difficult. I don't know if you guys have had texts have that as a concern, like, well, they're canceling all the time. I do always reroute, 9 out of 10 times I'm able to reroute them, but it is still, still difficult. It's like, well, why take them on? Well, because they still deserve services, right? And where is the line? And we've talked about that on other, podcasts too. But, where is the line? But I guess to, like, if any RBTs or even BCBAs are hearing this and you're feeling that way too, like, just know that there are times that I am communicating and addressing it with families, but I can't always be totally 100% open about what's going on behind the scenes all the time, right? I mean, I always am advocating. When I, start right away with the families, it's like, just like you said, Jen, like, this is a business, first and foremost, clients and technicians are my priorities, right? But it is a business, and I have to make sure that it's going to be, fruitful for everybody involved. And so if you're canceling all the time, it is their livelihood. And I have to make sure that, we're all aware of that. It is difficult, because sometimes the parents, yep, I understand. And then that's not always the behavior we get, right? So, but I just, I want to make sure that everybody, I do try to advocate as much as I can. I don't know if you guys have had the same experience.
I tell everybody I'm on everybody's side. Like, I'm on everybody's side. Literally, I'm on my BCBA side. I'm on my tech side. I'm on my family side. I'm trying to make this work for everybody. I'm not trying to take sides. Now, I'm going to probably agree with you just a little bit more than others on some things, and there's going to be an accountability that comes into play here. That's the kind and compassionate thing to do, is make sure there's accountability. But at the end of it, I'm here to be on everyone's side so that everybody is getting what they need, and not to feel like, oh, it's just me against them or them, really here to try to make this advantageous for everyone, because at the end of the day, the sole focus is this child. And we all have to be on the same team, and we all have to be talking in order to make sure the child is getting what they need.
I've had to kind of draft up almost like a template, because like every year around like maybe Christmas break or summer break, we have families that want to flip flop their schedule or do crazy things or go out of town for extensive periods of time. And we kind of have like a 2-week rule. Like, if you're gone more than 2 weeks in a row, no, there is a possibility, not a guarantee, but that your RBT might be restaffed. And I make it clear to them that it's not because your RBT doesn't want to work with you, it's because they need to get paid. Or I also say the same thing to families that are, wishy-washy with their schedule, and they just do a lot of cancellations. And I let them know, like, this is a problem, financially, this is their job. And like, if you've got someone you're working with 20 hours a week, and you're gone for a month, or you're gone for 2 weeks, or 1 week here and 1 week here the same month, they've just lost half their paycheck. So I've kind of tried to be somewhat transparent with that with families when they have like a big fit about, the possibility of losing their therapist. Again, we do our best to, like, we have our spreadsheet, we try and fill slots, but it's not guaranteed. And if it begins to be a trend or a big problem, or if the therapist is just like, I can't not get paid for this long. Sometimes they get subbed out for a temporary client, or they get subbed out for a long-term client replacement. So it's not ideal, but it happens. And then So I think that's one of the hard conversations that I've had to have. And I've also had like, so we offer health benefits and all that sort of stuff to full-time employees. So we've tried to move towards when we hire someone, if that's one of their goals, if they're wanting to work full-time, we try and, we let them know that if they're starting part-time, that our goal is full-time if that's their goal, and we'll work towards that. Or we ideally have the clients needed to staff them to get them to at least 30 hours. I had I can think of like 2 clients this year, that I realized that their RBT was like half an hour or 1 hour short of qualifying for healthcare benefits. And the family wasn't utilizing all of their hours, and they loved their RBT, which was great. But I just decided to be direct with them and say, hey, can we extend sessions by like an extra 15 minutes? Or is there room do you have flexibility? You have your therapist really, really would love to have health insurance. And because you're ending sessions at 12 instead of 12:15, or starting at 8:30 instead of 8:15, like she's missing out. And, I would love to be fair to her and be able to offer it to her. And so I'm being direct and coming to you like, hey, give me flexibility here. If they push back, because sometimes they do push back, and sometimes I decide and choose to be transparent. Like, your therapist is getting the short end of the stick here. Because, you're not wanting to, extend just a little bit. So 9 times, I would say actually 100% of the time, they've been willing to do it. So once I let them, see things from the other side, and it's just not me trying to push money at them, it's actually costing me more money, this way. But like, I think it would help with, continuing the staff being on their case, and having the therapist be less likely to want to leave because they want health benefits, and they're, if they keep these clients, they won't ever get there. So it's been kind of my workaround. I've tried to do when possible, just to, keep the staff happy, and, it also benefits the child too. So
I think benefits have been kind of difficult for me to make sure that I'm actually offering something that's really beneficial to the RBTs, right? I mean, and it is also hard too, because like I've always said, we need the like older, more mature, more settled people coming to us to be RBTs, but we also need the young ones because they have the energy, right? They have the energy that can sustain this type of job, because our kiddos, they can really pull out the energy for us, and to be able to match it, it's exhausting sometimes too. But that's always been on my radar. And again, I mean, just like I've said other times too, I don't have it all figured out. I've had some different thoughts. I've offered some different things, but I wish that I could offer more. And maybe if you guys have the panel, that could be one of the questions for them too, is like, what would a good benefits package
look like?
You guys be? Yeah. I mean, what would that be? Because, but at the same time, it's also hard too, because even, employees in general, like in the state of Washington, full-time is 32 hours. And so I'm like, okay, but that's 8 hours less than, in the state of Montana. That's, a whole day less than the state of Montana. And then if we're like, okay, we're going to get 32 hours, but you're still only working 25, 28 hours, on average because of cancellations, where do we go with that? Like, where do we set the standards? What is fair? What is not fair? Both sides, we don't want to be taken advantage of on both sides. I don't want to take advantage of my employees. Just like you said, Stephen, I don't wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'm going to burn my team out, right? Like, I'm going to try to get them to work as many hours as possible. And we have some of those things in place to try to help, but the benefits has always kind of been a concern. And I think that is probably one of the things. I have not read all of the Reddit things, but maybe that is one that you guys have read, that there's just not enough benefits. There's not enough financial gain. There's not enough growth, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the issues. Like there are 3 main, trends, I guess, like, right? And I think you've already all touched on them, right? Is like not having enough support. And that's kind of my next question. There was not enough hours, and then not enough growth. Those are the big ones, right? And support is in many ways. Support's on the training side. But the question I have is on the supervision side, right? And one of the general themes I would see in these groups is, okay, I love the clients I'm working with. I love this job. It's amazing. It's rewarding. It's stressful. But I'm seeing my supervisor maybe once a month, and I don't know what to do. Should I leave this company and all my clients lose all those hours and they get they're just the support is gone, or do I kind of just power through this and maybe try to get, push for more supervision. And so I'm just curious, like, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. But like, what would you say to techs in that situation, other than come work for me because it's different here? What would you suggest in that situation?
I mean, they should come work with me, but that's, but I think it's important to have, like, you can get feedback directly to the company owner even, and just say, hey, or even the supervisor say, hey, I'm not getting my minimum supervision every month, or can I get some extra training on this? I'm really struggling with this program, or like kind of advocating for yourself, kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, April, just advocating for yourself and what you need to feel successful and feel confident in what you're doing. It's great to have clients and families that you love, but we also know that some days are hard. And if you don't feel like, or if you're running a behavior plan and you've been doing the same behavior plan for 6 months and you're not seeing the change that was intended by it, but the BCBA never changed it or updated it, you can ask, like, you can explain more about the situation and what really happens when everything goes down, and see if y'all can strategize. I mean, not that the RBT is necessarily the person that makes the judgments on the behavior plans, but maybe give feedback on, like, the struggles or the barriers that they're encountering during those types of situations, or barriers to taking the data in this type of heightened behavior issue. And sometimes there's even, like, observer effect when the supervisor's there. Sometimes the child behaves better or worse depending on the new person in the room, kind of thing. So that happens too. I mean, it even happens to the parents. Sometimes they're on better behavior when the supervisor's there.
Sure.
So.
I agree, Robin. I think that for me, I definitely, my goal is to see every client once a week. It always has been, right? That's like my goal. But especially in the spring when we have, other things going on, IEP meetings, things that I want to support my families in beyond, right? Beyond being able to bill for it and stuff. That though all those things take up time. What I have done in the past is I've had some supervisees try to kind of support just so that my techs feel a little bit more, right? So it might not just be me that week, it might be me on Monday, and then a supervisee will be, there on a Thursday. I will say, though, that there's some families that have not been very receptive to that because it's just one more person in their home. And I understand that as well. But I've also had I have had to have some hard conversations with parents just saying, like, look, I need to be able to support my staff, and I am only one person, and I have to keep my caseload at a certain number because I have to be able to support my staff to the best of my ability or keep quality services. And if I have these supervisees who are becoming BCBAs, one, they're already just demonstrating passion, right? Like if I have somebody come to me and say, hey, I want to be a BCBA, can you provide some of that supervision? I'm like, oh, the passion is there. I can't teach the passion. I can't teach that. I can teach the skill though, right? So I'm like, yes, let me see if I can give you this opportunity, right? But that is disheartening because there's times where I'm like, these people really, as supervisees, have already worked in the field for quite some time and really could benefit, or they could really give the tech support outside of just me, and they're learning the job at the same time. But when I have families doing that, there's been times where I've just had to say, like, look, I know, I'm sorry, I understand it's just one more person, but can you please, try to just look at it as a good opportunity for your child for generalization purposes, for, us to have just one more person who knows the program well, who knows their treatment plan well, so that if we have to switch staff, they can even step in for interim time, or they can help train the next person to come on specifically to your client or to your child. I still get pushback every once in a while, but for the most part, all of my families are really great. And that has been really helpful. But, I have not ever asked, and maybe this is a good question for me to ask my techs, like, how do you guys feel? Like, is that beneficial to you guys still? Or would you is it just, nope, I just want it from the BCBA, only the BCBA, right? And I guess it would depend on the quality of the supervisee, right? I mean, there's always going to be that too. But if they've been in the field long enough, to want to be, and they've stuck around, I think that says something, right?
I
think
know. One of the things that that I heard so much was like techs felt like they were like on a stranded stranded on a deserted island or whatever. And so what we found is even like doing some mentor, like peer mentor things when it was like appropriate for the situation, like just someone else being out there with them, especially if it was a difficult situation or kind of a lonely, you have some kids that are lower engaging and like, so just knowing that, because I think that's one of the drawbacks of in-home services, unfortunately, is people do feel more isolated. And so whether it's a BCBA, a peer mentor, a supervisee, any of that, in from a lot of the feedback that I've heard, that would be accepted. And I know, Jennifer, you haven't had to say yet, but I just wanted to bring up too, I've heard so many ABA, BCBA owners recently talk about, I want to be able to give my team more training. They're asking for more training. How do I afford that? So I know that's another thing that sometimes the staff isn't aware of, and it's the funding for it.
Yeah, and I'm assuming in this question that the BCBA is probably also overloaded, overworked, burnt out, and just like barely hanging on, you know what I mean? And so they aren't, again, I don't believe, and I don't believe that a BCBA wakes up in the morning and says, yeah, I'm just not going to supervise today. I don't have time for that, right? Like that's not how they work. It's like, I've got, way more hours than I can possibly get. I've got to get these assessments in and these treatment plans in, or these kids aren't going to get hours because they're going to be delayed. I have to go see this fire that's going on right now. I'm not getting the support from my boss on these parent issues or these employee issues, or, I assume that they are just as badly off as this tech that says, I can't stay here anymore. I love it, but I can't. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I think that's a couple things. One thing I was going to say about burnout, burnout isn't always about they're working too much. It could be they're working too little, and they're not getting enough hours, and they're stressing about how they're going to pay their bills. And so that could be a part of the burnout. It's not always about you're working too much. It could be I'm not working enough.
Sure.
This is burning me out because I am so stressed out on how I'm going to make rent. One thing I would say, too, that I've always thought about that we do encourage is RBTs need to know what they are ethically bound to as well. They need to go on the BACB website and read that RBT handbook. They have their own ethical guidelines they have to follow. And so to advocate and say, listen, I'm not being trained. I am not ethically serving this child because I'm not trained right. Like there's a disconnect. It is okay to say that and to go to the supervisor and say, I know that this is not something you're intending. I know that's not the overarching message here. But I feel like I am not performing ethically right now because I am not serving this client the way that I should. Can you please help me? Can you please help me do better? And I think some of it also, when I read some of those things, it's as very much about your approach and delivery on needing this as it is. You're not going to come into me after 3 months of being an RBT and tell me what needs to be done after nearly 20 years in this industry, right? Like you're not going to do that. And there's not a BCBA one who hasn't put in the time, the energy, the supervision, the blood, sweat, and tears that's going to allow a 3-month long RBT come in and say, I need you to do this because this is what the child needs. That's not how that's going to work. There needs to be hey, listen, I'm struggling. Can you please help me along this journey? I agree with you, Stephen. I'm under the assumption that these are BCBAs they're being told you need 40 hours of billables. I don't care what you do on your own time, but you're giving me 40 hours come hell or high water. And if you don't, so just like you said, to your point, BCBAs are jumping ship too. Like they've had enough. They can't do that. They're on the other side of it. I'm working 80 hours a week because I have to get this in and I don't have the time. And the BCBAs themselves are like, this isn't right. I'm not even training my staff the way I want them to be trained.
Right.
I'm not hard though.
The way I want to support them.
I think that's hard though, Jen, because I don't do salary. I probably won't ever do salary. And I think it's hard for BCBAs because the thing is like they want to make a lot of money, but they don't sometimes want to put the amount of hours in. So I'm like, okay, let's take that out then. Let's take that out of the equation. Like the hours that you work is what you get paid for. And the reality is that hourly rate doesn't always equal up to what you would be making as a salary right position. And so that's difficult. So I'm like, if you want to make X amount of money, I've gotten to the point too where I've hired BCBAs and I give them everything that the insurance reimburses me for. I'm like, I am not here to make money. It's like off of you. That's great if I can, but this is how much they reimburse me for. If you work, that is how much you will get paid. I am not making money off of you. And so it's worked sometimes and it hasn't worked other times. So there's always that.
I'm talking more about the BCBAs, like Stephen was saying, the ones that they've got 15, 20 caseloads. Like they truly are making, they're supposed to take on 15 or 20 caseloads and manage this. I'm thinking more along the lines of BCBAs that I've talked to, that's where their burnout is coming from. They're supposed to take these ginormous amount of caseloads, and they're supposed to be billing out this ginormous amount of hours every week. And instead of working, instead of putting in a 40, 50 hour week, they're putting in a 60, 80 hour week. Right. They're working on Saturdays and they're working on Sundays. And it just starts from the top and it just starts trickling down. To your point, Mallory, yes, I understand. I agree. And I'm operating more on the assumption of those super the BCBAs who are trying to put in and do, because I know what you mean about the other side. I think we can all argue there's two sides here.
Oh, for sure.
There's two paths we see on this. And I'm kind of erring on the side of the professional who's genuinely wanting to be in there, support their staff, do what's right by their client, and have some semblance of sanity. That's so weak.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robin.
We try and have I've done what Mallory did for many, many years. And then I ran into struggles, people being willing to work hourly. So then I just kind of hold up my big girl pants and try to figure out the salary options. And, pretty much everybody that's applying wants 6 figures. I'm like, okay, so you got certified a week ago. Give me a second. So what we've done, sometimes it works great. Sometimes people don't want to put in the time, but we have a lower minimum billable requirement to get your base salary. And then any hour you work above that base salary number, we pay you an hourly rate. And I have a number of our BCBAs. I'm not necessarily making much money off of them. They're making 6 figures. They're making the same base salary and they're working under 40 hours a week. So they do it logistically. They kind of they make their own schedule. They have their clients. They have how many clients they can do. And they have some backup client options. If someone cancels, they might throw in another, client that has extra hours or something. Or if they, get all the hours they want in that week, or they want to take some PTO, then they have that flexibility too. So, I think we try and have some balance for work-life balance. And I think that's been one of the things we've gotten positive feedback on overall. And it's been helpful, but I think I struggled when I just gave people a full-on salary. And then I had some people that were doing crazy things, they took a full-on salary from me, but then they worked part-time somewhere else. And they weren't working all the hours we needed them to, but they were enjoying their salary and getting hourly, somewhere else. So, that was a painful lesson. But we tried to find a way to kind of get the minimum that we need to survive, ideally, and then give them the rest, basically. So that's kind of how we're doing it. And overall, I think it's worked really well. So that's kind of our most recent.
Oh, that's I would have never guessed somebody. How do you even have the time to do that?
I don't know. I've heard during COVID, it was there were some things happening there. Not necessarily in our field, right? But in other fields, there's like working 2 full-time jobs with 2 full-time salaries because they were able to do it and manage both. And I mean, it's crazy. I do think that it's just shifted a lot, you know. You know, I just think that I don't necessarily know. I mean, something maybe that I need to research, but like, what was the intention for the model that we have as ABA and being reimbursed by insurance? Was it a salary model? Because really, we bill for units, right? We bill units, and 4 units is 1 hour. And so really, if we're doing that, but you know, our field has like went in a completely different direction. And yes, I mean, this is a high burnout job. I get it. I mean, I'm in the thick of it. I have my own caseload and I'm still running, you know, the company. Like, I understand it's a lot. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend what I'm doing, right? And to anybody else. And there's always times where I'm like, I have to model better. I have to do better because I have to model it better so that new BCBAs coming into the field don't get to a point where they're, you know, feeling like, yeah, I'm burned out. I'm ready to be done. But I don't think that was the model at the beginning, right? When we first started. So
yeah, I mean, like, what was the
something
model?
interesting?
Like, insurance, it was you churned and burned. I mean, like, it was just, I mean, we've had multiple discussions on, you know, I mean, I remember Derek, like, hey, yeah, I drive 50 miles. I used to drive over 100 miles to see a client, you know, once or twice a week. And that was my job. And I did it, you know, and it was, that's what it was. But I think the thing that was different then, though, is that there still was a work-life balance. Like, because you really could decide, I'm going to do this with this amount of clients. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work it. And you had that flexibility. Somebody else wasn't in there telling you what your schedule was going to be. You had the ability to schedule. So if you were tired, you didn't have to, I'm not going to work on Fridays. And there was no one telling you that, oh, no, you're going to work on Fridays. You know, because you weren't under an agency, there wasn't somebody supervising you like there is today in the field, you know, where it's kind of moved more to that business model in a lot of ways.
I also just want to make sure everybody knows that I'm not begrudging anybody, because the reality is that everybody wants to work less for more money. Yeah, that's life.
Yeah,
sure.
That is life, right? That's life, you know, and so I do understand that. So I don't want any BCBAs or RVTs to think that, you know, like, I'm saying that to them because really that's what everybody should be doing, right? Because we should be living more, right? We should not be working to get to the grave just by working our entire life, right? I mean, we really should be living, right? But it's difficult. I'm really curious if you guys are able to get a panel together. I'm super excited to hear some of it. And obviously I will go and read Reddit now, although I'm not sure that I really want to, but I will definitely read it because I'm interested. You know, all of us are here. We want to do better.
Yeah, I think it's a struggle. And, you know, like, coming from the business owner side, I'm sure you all are affected by this as well. And I think we've kind of hinted at this already, but when a funder, you know, I'm not giving any actual numbers here, but let's say we look at TRICARE rates in Texas, maybe it's $65 an hour for a tech, somewhere around there. When a funder takes that $65 an hour rate, and then they say, okay, we're lowering the rates by 30% as of next week. What do you do? You have no choice but to say, either I'm going to cut wages, I'm going to cut hours, I'm going to force people to do more billables, I'm going to cut training. Like, what else do you do? And so we're in this like race to the bottom of how poor quality can we provide services to make a semblance of a profit so that we can pay ourselves and pay our staff. And I feel like that's kind of where we're headed, right? And it's
that's what I mean. That's what I've been like thinking for the last 20 minutes too, or even longer. But it's like and then when you brought up like what was the model here, because it's you know, we are like, our model is based on billables, but there's a lot of non-billable stuff that we need to provide for our team. Training being minimal of that, right? And being able to individualize training and meet our staff where they're at. And, you know, then there's the whole like session and data collection conversation.
Recruitment audits.
Like, and there's a lot, going on that, I found myself, Stephen and I were having a conversation, I don't know, a few weeks ago. We were on a walk, and I just, like completely unfiltered conversation. And I was like, well, should BCBAs open businesses as if they don't have the money, if they're just relying on billables, if there's no other money coming in, should we be opening businesses? I mean, I know we did. I mean, like, we didn't have like a pot of money when we opened our business.
Right.
That's one thing to look at too. But then that brings us back to like the billable rate.
Yeah,
like
the model has to work. It has to be financially
how do we make this work so that so that it is sustainable, but we're continuing to to have quality services and provide quality employment to our staff so that they can provide quality services. Right. I mean, it comes down like everything else, right? Like money, right? Like, where does the money come from and how do we do it? And like, we all want to work less for more money because we want that balance.
Sure. Yeah.
But we also all want to be treated well too.
Maybe we need data
and about the ethical billing, when we were talking about that, there's your biggest problem. I can't bill for these types of services, but this is part of the service.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not okay to sit there and tell me that it's, you know what I mean? Like that pot, when I was listening to that, I was like, this is why this is the problem. They're trying to pigeonhole what we can bill for and what we can't.
Yes. And I mean, like every other day I'm reading an insurance story where somebody went to the ER, they went there for like 12 hours and they got their bill from the hospital. It's like $80,000, right? And it was a $10,000 aspirin, and like it's like what, like that's a full year's therapy for like full-time therapy for a child, and you're complaining about our rates and you're okay with paying that. Like, it's just like the whole system is just wild, right? And that's a story for another day of how do we, we as a field have to push the
payers, funders. Yeah. They froze.
Yeah.
Oh no. That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, like, we need data, we need research, we need people to be giving, right? Payers, and to be able to advocate. Like, you guys are saying you want us to provide these awesome quality services, but this one billable code, the billable code for the assessment, you're only giving us 4 hours max, right? That's how much we're paid. In Washington, like, you're supposed to only bill 4 to 6 hours. That's max. But guess what? On a difficult case, it's going to take a lot longer than 4 to 6 hours, right? So it doesn't really necessarily work, and it's ongoing. That's the other thing. I think we tend to forget, or I mean, I stopped towards the beginning. I did calculate more of like, okay, this is how many hours it took for this client. But if you do that, it's exhausting, right? So it's like the continual amount of time it takes. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.